A single-member operating agreement feels pointless on the first read, and that misread is exactly why coaches skip the document and get hurt later. There's no co-member to govern with. There's no partner to negotiate distributions with. The whole structure can look like a 30-page contract you sign with yourself. The reason it matters is what it does for the LLC's status as a separate legal entity. The document is the evidence that the LLC is real, governed, and operated as a distinct structure, not a fiction wrapped around a coach's personal checking account. That evidence is what holds up the veil we covered in 4.1.2. Why it matters with one member comes down to what the document does in plain operating terms. You're not governing with anyone. You can't disagree with yourself. The document still matters because it's the artifact that proves the LLC is a real separate entity, not a paper wrapper around a personal checking account. That distinction is what holds up the veil if a creditor or plaintiff later argues the entity was a fiction. The piece of paper isn't bureaucratic. The piece of paper is the evidence. 4 sections in the agreement do actual work, and 3 of them are short. Ownership and membership names the entity, the state of formation, the sole member, and their 100% ownership stake. That's it for a single-member LLC. Management spells out whether the LLC is member-managed or manager-managed, and who has authority to sign contracts on behalf of the entity. Capital and distributions documents how money goes in and how money comes out as owner's draws, with the methodology for both. Continuity and dissolution covers what happens to the LLC at the member's death or incapacity, and how the entity is wound down voluntarily. Section 3, Capital and Distributions, has a downstream consequence most coaches don't see until later. The section establishes in writing that owner's draws are distributions, not salary. That distinction is doing nothing for a default Schedule C single-member LLC, but it becomes load-bearing the moment you run the S-corp election math in Unit 410. Under an S-corp election, the IRS expects you to take a reasonable W-2 salary, and the rest comes out as distributions that are not subject to self-employment tax. The operating agreement having documented distributions as distributions from the start is what makes the S-corp transition clean, rather than a paper trail problem the CPA has to fix retroactively. Knowing when a template suffices and when an attorney is warranted is the meta decision. Template works if you're a solo coach with no employees, operating in a single state, taking no outside investment, running a standard coaching practice. The starter template handles all 4 of those conditions and is the right answer for the large majority of single-member coaching LLCs. Attorney is warranted if you're taking on a partner or co-founder, if you have an unusual revenue arrangement, if there's revenue sharing or licensing or equity in play, or if your state has special LLC language that needs to be reflected. California and Texas both have quirks worth attorney review. Banks ask for the operating agreement during business account opening, and that's where coaches without one discover the document mattered. The bank's compliance team wants to see who is authorized to act on behalf of the entity before they let you open the account or write checks against it. The operating agreement is the document that names you as the member with that authority. Most states don't require the agreement to be filed with the Secretary of State. It's an internal governance document, but you have to be able to produce a signed copy on request. Keep one in the Entity Records folder with the formation articles and the EIN confirmation letter. Jennifer is a composite of a pattern I've seen 3 or 4 times this year. She forms the LLC online. Articles filed, EIN obtained, all the formation work checked off. She skips the operating agreement because she's the only member, and she can't see what it would say. 18 months later, she applies for a small business loan to fund a course launch. The bank's underwriter asks for the operating agreement. She doesn't have one. The application stalls while she scrambles to draft and sign one. Worse, in year 2, a client claims her practice was not a real business. And without the agreement in the file, the argument that the LLC was a maintained separate entity is harder to make. The starter template is filled in hours, not weeks, and the attorney-drafted alternative is reserved for genuinely unusual situations. Open the template, work through Part 1, Ownership and Member Identification, fill the blanks. Part 2, Management. Most single-member coaches pick Member Managed, and the template language for that is standard. Part 3, Capital and Distributions. Initial contribution gets stated, distribution methodology gets named. Part 4, Continuity. The default language usually works. Sign, date, store a paper copy and a digital copy. Total time investment is 1 to 3 hours of focused work. The attorney-drafted version at $300 to $1,500 is the right call when partnership structure, equity grants, or state-specific language pushes you outside what the template covers. Action before the next video is concrete and time-boxed. Open the operating agreement starter template attached to this unit. Fill Part 1 on ownership and Part 2 on management. Both sections look nearly identical for every single member coaching LLC, so the work is mostly transcription. Flag any field where you're uncertain. Those are the attorney questions you'll bring to the conversation we cover in Module 3.4 on hiring the business attorney. Don't aim for a final signed document today. Aim for a complete first draft with the questions surfaced. The signature can come after the attorney conversation if you need one.